Good evening out there. Good evening. It's Chris Waston checking in with BMEA here at another live episode of the podcast, Lifting Our Voices. Give people a moment to jump in. Looking forward to bringing you on this conversation. Please share and like this. Of course, we want to get this in front of as many people as possible. Got some good stuff planned. And checking in. Bringing in my co-host, Mike. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, Chris. How you feel?
I'm good, man. Can't complain, bro. Can't complain. It's been a good week. We got some exciting things going on. I'm excited about today's show with a definitely friend of the show, Mr. Jason Acosta. I'm about to actually bring Jason on right now. And we're going to go ahead and get this thing kicked off. Let's get Jason on. Jason, what's up, man?
Yo, what up, y'all? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Yes, sir.
How you doing?
Let's get it. I'm good, yo. It's good to see y'all. It's been a minute.
It has,
Yeah,
man. It
man.
has. It's always
It's been
good to
a
have you
minute,
back on the show, man. Friend of the show for sure.
Facts. Yo, what y'all doing?
Man, so let's get into it, brother. If you
It's freezing up.
Okay, we back?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. I hear you, Jason. You hear me good?
I hear you, yeah. Mike, you freezing up a little bit on my end.
Yeah, same here. I might have to move around a little bit.
Now, you got that Cricket Wireless. What's up, man?
Oh, man.
Your joy acting funny right now.
We're gonna
Right, hold on one second.
make sure Mike get to the Wi-Fi, man. I don't know what's going on with Mike, but Jason, while you get situated, man, why don't you just let's get an update, man. It's been a while since we connected.
Yeah.
Get the people this update. Introduce yourself to those who don't know you. Let us know what's going on with you.
Facts. I see some of the folks joining us that I know. Will, what up, bro? Dama, what up? Good to see some of y'all on here. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Jason Acosta, and I'm a proud native of the Bronx. Y'all see the Yankee hat in Bronx, New York. And I've been doing a lot, man. So I'm a social worker. I'm a macro social worker. That's how I always like to start by introducing myself. And what that means is a lot of my work is really looking at systems, how systems cause trauma upon Black and brown communities. And that's pretty much the lens that I use to do all the work that I do. And I wear a lot of hats. So full-time, I do equity work for the New York City Department of Education. And I work across our city to really focus on different things like policy, program, and leadership, mindset work, et cetera. And the thing that's important about that is a lot of our offices, the people that work within our central offices, they push policies, budgets, initiatives into our schools, right? So I'll come back to that later on. I have a consulting business where I'm doing some work around hip hop therapy right now, which I'll get deeper into later on, but it's really looking at how we leverage hip hop to provide therapeutic services, particularly in this context with youth and foster care. And then separate from that, I launched a creative brand called Live from the Bronx, me and my boy Kevin, where we're doing some work around really trying to diversify the creative space, right? Fashion, tech, arts, et cetera. So what you'll get from all of that is the foundation of all the work that I do is really making sure that we're able to create opportunities for Black and brown folks. Specifically, that's my mission. And trying to figure out how we can remove barriers to do so, right, while moving towards collective healing. So I'll pause there.
Yeah, man. You talking a mile a minute, man.
Yeah,
that was good, man.
Yeah, I want to make sure I get that out.
Yeah. No. That's really dope. We got Mike joining back in, at least attempting to. But let's just kind of get the conversation kicked off, and I think definitely get to a lot of stuff you mentioned around identity work. So for people who may not be aware, like just kind of give us a foundational understand what does that term mean, and like why is it important? Because I think what you talked a lot of stuff about identity already, but just kind of give us a foundation as we get ready to jump into this conversation. I see we got Sterling on here. a lot of people in the audience. We appreciate y'all tapping in. I'm gonna get some shout outs in a second, but go ahead and just get us kicked off with what are we talking about today?
Facts. So also another shout out to Sterling. I see you. Shout out to Philly. So I think there's a lot in this, right? And when we talk about identity, what I like to focus on, again, just want to bring this to the forefront because this is my biggest focus, is really thinking about, for Black and brown folks, how we can create our own stories, unpack a lot of what we've been socialized to believe and what we've internalized just throughout our childhood and our upbringing, and being able to reconnect to our ancestry in an effort to create our own stories, right? So a lot of times, I live in the South Bronx, and I grew up in the South Bronx. A lot of times when we hear about the Bronx is super negative, but people don't see all the community that exists there, right? They don't see the beauty in the people and all the amazing work that's happening. It's always painted with a really negative brush. And what happens is, as we're growing up, we buy into that. We internalize that, right? And it's pretty much fed to you in all different mediums, right? So growing up, I see what's going on in the neighborhood, right? You see on the news every day what they're saying, but then you're going to school, the teachers don't look like you, right? The social workers don't look like you, the counselors, the guidance counselors, they don't look like you, and they come in just to teach or work and they go home, right? So why is it that people don't want to spend time in my neighborhood, in my community? I walk outside, there's a heavy police presence around my school, and I'm going through metal detectors every day. Why is that happening? Right? Why do people see me in this way, and what's going on? And what happened for me growing up is I bought into this idea that the South Bronx wasn't good enough, and that I had to leave in order to find some sort of success, in order to like find, whatever, like this, like a more beautiful place, etc. Right? Everyone always told us, leave the Bronx, don't come back. Leave the Bronx, don't come back. Right? Well, if we don't come back, who's gonna come and share a different narrative with the neighborhood? So as I'm buying into all of this and what's being fed to me, I now don't even start to see myself as brilliant. I start to not see myself as not as beautiful, right, etc. And so that has a long lasting impact on who I am. And a lot of times what that results in is me not wanting to come back to the neighborhood, right? And me saying, y'all got to leave the Bronx. The Bronx is dirty. The Bronx is this. It's like what we hear all the time about our community. And long term, that further impacts me, because as I'm going into the career force, I can't even tell people where I'm from, right? Because the minute that I say, yo, I'm from the Bronx, people already got a negative view. They're going to start judging me. And what that does, it leads to an imposter syndrome, right, et cetera. So I think the role of identity in it, just generally speaking, is really for us to think about who we are and who we want to become, and also where we've come from, right? Those things are really important because it empowers us in a different way. And then looking at identity in the context of education, right? We are often stripped from our culture the minute we walk into a school building, right? The policies, the rules, the curriculum. Schools are often a training grounds for forcing us to assimilate to white society and white culture. And so that's even more important for us to take a step back to say, well, why is it that I need to sit like this with my hands crossed? Why is it that I can't speak and be loud and ratchet or whatever in the classroom, right? Why is it that I can't talk in the cafeteria, right? Why is it that I have to wear uniforms every day? Why, right? And so these things exist, and what you come to this is all based on white supremacy ideology since the beginning of public education, right? So it's important for us to recognize that and unpack it all, because what that often does to us is it's harmful, right? It harms us, and we'll just continue to perpetuate the same cycles. So identity is like the core of who we are.
So Jason, and I can definitely, I'm from Detroit, as you know, so I can definitely just resonate with that message of like, oh, your hometown is bad, like you want to make it out, or it's not the place. And of course, we know people that go on and do things and do move, but we know a lot of people that do come back. And then you mentioned also, like, there's a lot of societal voices and forces that do perpetuate and share these identities. They reinforce these narratives. So like, how do we begin to shift that in schools? Because I'm sure there's a lot of teachers, and I'm sure we got some people here in the audience. They may find like they don't have the space or the time to really sit and try to, maybe, produce this counter narrative when you've been told you got to teach content within a certain amount of time, and then when kids leave the confines of that classroom, these same forces are still telling that story. So, like, what is like the actionable items? Because I think most people would agree with what you're saying, but I think we find challenges in that still. So, like, what can really be done, for the everyday person out here who does have that opportunity and interaction with young people?
That's a great question. And the thing that I always say is that you have to know who you are first before you can understand the young people in front of you. So I say that to say, before we even consider how to encourage or empower young people to do a deep analysis of who they are and where they come from, teachers need to know who they are, right? A lot of times it's similar. Most of our professors are white. Most of our teachers are white, right? Unless you live in certain communities where you've been fortunate to have teachers that look like you. But for the most part, a lot of our schooling is facilitated by white folks. And so what happens is we do the same thing. If we become teachers and we go into the classroom and all we're doing is really trying to teach the content we've been taught to teach or asked to teach, whether or not we know it, sometimes that we are just as harmful as white folks, right, in those spaces. So I think first start with self. Think about who you are, and do that deep analysis. Because once you're able to do that, then you'll find organic ways to do that with students, right? So I'm in one of the hats I wear as an adjunct professor, and I teach high school students who are taking college classes with me. So that's where I'm at right now. And I was teaching earlier, and one of the things that we're doing right now is reading the academic, and my students are coming from all different types of high schools across the city. So some of the students are coming from what you would refer to as like these high performing academic schools. Some of my students are coming from schools that you would quote unquote consider to be low academic schools, right? And so we're all together. They all have different experiences, and it's important for me to understand contextually where they come from, right? So today we were talking about just understanding the socio-political and socio-cultural factors that impact and shape a student's life. As an educator, for me, I need to already have walked in there trying to understand where my students are coming from, right? So if I'm teaching in Staten Island, if you don't know what that is, New York City is comprised of 5 boroughs. Think of 5 counties that make up a city. One of those areas is called Staten Island. So if I'm teaching in Staten Island,
I knew that, by the way. I knew that,
No, this for the audience.
I got you. I'm just playing with you.
So if I'm teaching Staten Island, what they need in my approach to Staten Island has to be very different than when I'm coming to the South Bronx or I'm in East Harlem, right? Those are very different approaches. So I need to do my own homework to first understand, who the young people are that I'm serving. And then what I try to do is simply like relate to them. I don't even always do like a super deep, I don't always have the chance myself to go deeply into this, right? But I try to drop little gems. So we just finished reading chapter 5 of Ratchetdemic, which is called Elevators, Haters, and Suckers, right? Simply, all my students know what a hater is, right? All my students just generally like, oh, I look good today, that person hating on me. Right. And so because I understand and know that they know that, as I'm talking about this chapter with them, they're able to identify the teachers that are haters, right? They're able to identify the teachers that are suckers and the teachers that are elevators, because that simply relates to their life. Who do you want to be around? Who are the people that elevate you in your life? Do you ever get a chance to kind of step back and understand what's happening and why it's happening? And so those are some of the questions I try to ask throughout, just to drop gems and nuggets, because I don't have time to go through all this either, right? And then what I also try to do is create activities, like do little activities where they get a chance to really reflect. So like a social identity chart, that takes like, I'll start the semester with that, because it has a list of all these identities: race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, etc., socioeconomic status. And it helps me to see, like, do they understand who they are? Do they understand what these identities mean, how to define it, and how to think through those lenses, right? What does it mean for me to think through a lens that I normally don't think about, right? So it's easy for me to say I'm Latinx and use that lens, but I may not think about my religion, all the time. I may not think about my socioeconomic status all the time, right? And so I try to do activities like that and have conversations around that, just to start, again, dropping gems and nuggets, so that hopefully they have a chance to build on that. And then outside of that, I've worked on this really dope curriculum with the homie Robert from He Is Me, that was taught in a couple of Chicago public high schools. I seen Cesare jump on at one point. Shout out to him if he's still on. He was a part of that project. And one of the things that we were really intentional about is having students do a genogram as a part of this class. And if you don't know what that is, in social work, we use a genogram to really understand the full picture of what's going on with a family, right? And so, and we tend to go 3 generations back. So I might say, okay, Mike is my student, right? And I'm having Mike interview different people in his family to just understand generationally what the trends have been and what's going on. And as you create this visual, you start to include symbols that represent different things in your life. So if you had a family member, or if you had a family member that's generationally experienced poverty, there's a symbol you include that will show us this. Okay, and it oftentimes will allow you to get to the root, right? Oh, this started with this person. This started with that person, right? And it helps you to visualize why you're experiencing what you're experiencing. So we were really intentional about having students do a project that allowed them to go 3 generations back and interview, a grandmother, great-grandmother, grandfather. If those people aren't in your life, find somebody around that age, right, that you interview. And again, by doing that, it allows them to start thinking for themselves. Like, oh, like this is what was happening. Oh, these people are so dope. I didn't know that I came from this community, or I came from this lineage of ancestors, or whatever the case is, right? And so that's kind of how I try to go about it. As much as I could is drop these little gems that will hopefully allow students and encourage students to build on it on their own.
Yeah. So it's like being intentional. I think that's important. Like, being intentional on wanting to know those identities, find a space for students to reflect on it and get deeper in their own understanding. I think we got Mike back. Get a little fuzzy with Mike. I know you can jump in and add to the conversation while we got you.
My bad, fellas, man. Internet's been crazy where I'm at. But hopefully, can you hear me, fellas?
Yep.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yes. So, Jay, man, I read your articles on the Medium, and shout out to you, brother. For the audience, can you just talk a little bit more about, like, decolonizing the curriculum in schools? And, like, we had a conversation a few years back, actually, around this. But can you talk a little bit more about that for our audience? Like, what does that mean, and how can, like, school leaders kind of really, like, start to do that work?
Yeah, so this is kind of related to what we were just talking about around starting to do that work for ourselves first before we even start to think about how to apply it and work with students to encourage them to do that type of work, right? But if there's this, if you haven't seen or you're not aware, there's this kind of like cycle or thing that's called the cycle of socialization. And Bobby Harrow started this, I think, in the 70s. And the cycle of socialization essentially shows you how we as people are socialized in our society, right? And it starts from birth. And this is something that a lot of people might be familiar with already, but starting at birth, from the minute you're born, you are essentially, generally speaking, right? Your parents will put blue clothes on you if you're a boy, pink clothes on you if you're a girl, right? And so we start really early. Then the cycle allows you to see that, like, as you're you're the ages of like 3 to 5, the people that have the most influence on you are your parents and schools, right? Mm-hmm. That early on. And that's where you spend most of your time, is in school spaces, right? And as you move on, there are other things that further enforce what these norms are, right? What you're supposed to believe in, what you're supposed to think, depending on how you identify. And so that becomes commercials, that becomes media, that becomes different institutions, whether you're a part of churches, community programs, etc. And as you kind of look at this cycle, you can plug in almost any identity to see how that identity has been socialized. Whether or not you agree with it, like whether or not you believe that, or whether or not you identify with a particular identity or whatever, right? So, for example, if I identify as heterosexual, right, and in our country, that's the dominant culture or dominant identity, right? But so those norms and the way in which I've been socialized throughout my life is pretty much based in patriarchy, is based in, what life would be like for somebody who should identify as heterosexual. But if you don't identify with that, right, you start to think about when did people start pushing this on me, right? And what role did school play in also furthering that narrative? So I think it's important for us to think about everything from policy to curriculum, right? What are we teaching, right? Oftentimes when we think about Black history, we start at slavery, right, in our country. But there were so many dope educators and dope people doing amazing work before that, right? Why don't we uplift that? When we think about the books that we're reading, I mean, y'all know this, right? Like the authors of the books that we're teaching, right? Standardized testing is a huge, like, it's a huge moneymaker. We know that, right? Like, we look at McGraw-Hill, we look at Princeton Review, we look at all of these, even SATs, right? The executive director of College Board is a millionaire, right? That's not by coincidence. So if we have to teach students to prepare for an exam, we also have to buy the books and resources needed to prepare students to take those exams, right? So that's by design. Right. And so who are those people creating those exams? They're not us. And so I think there are a lot of ways in which school as an institution perpetuates white supremacy and white supremacist ideologies. And so it's important for us, again, to really think about what that means, right? Like, and I also have to understand, like, there are complexities, right? I may want to come in there and say, scratch this curriculum, but me saying scratch that curriculum can come with me risking my job. Right. Like I think it's important for us to also, like, understand that, right? And so what does it mean for us to come together as teachers who do understand that school can be harmful, and as a collective say, yo, we got to make a change, right? It's easier sometimes to fight in numbers than it is to be by yourself and be like, yo, I want to change this whole thing. But I think it's important for us to be brave enough to at least start that conversation with our administrators and with people in our schools that don't agree with the way we teach, right? I mean, think about math. You can teach that with indigenous practices. We're not taught that, so oftentimes we're alone in trying to figure out how to do that. Or I got to call, right, somebody from BMEA to be like, yo, I want to figure out how to, teach this class using X, Y, and Z, right? I may have never been taught that, but I want to learn, so I need to go somewhere that's going to teach me how to do that. In college, usually.
Yeah, and you brought up a really good point, and I'm going to say this to close it out, but the lack of representation in all aspects of education, not just in the classroom, but in the textbooks, in the administration, in the testing, and all college level, like all those things play a role in terms of how do we bring more of our cultures into the classroom and into the schools and into what kids are learning. But majority of these public schools are Black and brown children, right? So even to that point, when we talk about the deficits or the gaps that kids have in learning, you can kind of tie it directly to the fact that, like, they don't see enough of themselves in schools or in what they're learning to just improve their self-confidence or their identity, which, like you said before, kids are just trying to figure out who they are as people, and a lot of it is socialized based upon one way, the white heteronormative, you know what I'm saying, patriarchy.
And I think an example of this, because this is just fresh in my head. I was just talking to a student earlier, right? Discipline, man, in school is a huge, like, that is such a huge contributor to a lot of inequities and stuff that we see. We talk about the school to prison pipeline a lot. Like, I just had a student today. He's been gone for, like, I haven't seen him in a couple weeks. And I'm like, yo, he came into it. I'm like, yo, where the hell you been at? Right. And so we're having a conversation, and he unfortunately lost a friend. Just like the other day, there was a huge brawl in his school, and a teacher got beat up too. Right. And I asked him, I was like, yo, so what happened as a result of all of this? And there's a heavy police presence in the school right now. Every day he has to get scanned. right? Walk right into the school. I get on one side of it, the safety piece. I get that. But are there alternatives to figuring out how to deal with this? And so I had pulled up a video that I think it was from earlier this year. There was a school in Louisiana where a bunch of fathers have come together, right? They were called Dads on Duty. I don't know if anyone here is familiar with it, but Dads on Duty. And so there was this school in Louisiana had 23 students that got arrested in 3 days. 23 students that were arrested in 3 days, high school students. And as a result of that, there were a group of fathers that stepped in and they said, yo, we're going to figure out how to do this the right way so that more students don't get arrested and feed into the school to prison pipeline. So there wasn't a police presence there, right? Afterwards, it was dads that came into the school community, and the schools and the parents built this space where dads was like, yo, take your butt to class. Nah, we're not doing this, right? And they helped to further, they became a part of that community and really, played a significant role to the point where they didn't see suspensions after that for some time, right? And so as I'm thinking about what my student was just telling me about what happened in his school, what he had to go through, like, yo, what can we actually do to, right? We talk about restorative discipline, bringing students back into the community, et cetera, but there are real examples and models that exist, like the one I just mentioned, right? To shift how our schools currently do things. And so I think, you don't need to recreate any of these things. They exist. The models, the frameworks are there, right? Culturally relevant education, restorative discipline, right? We know that there's a lack of representation in the teacher force. So how do we create initiatives around that, like Black Male Educators Alliance, right? Being intentional about that. We know that inequities exist. Is whether or not we want to do something about it, and put our resources there to figure out how to shift these dynamics in our school spaces.
Absolutely, man. Hey, so look, Jay, we appreciate you joining us once again, man. Really insightful stuff. Give the people, for some of our followers, give them your social media, so where they can follow you at and where they can find you. And then I know you got your own website and all that, so tell the people how they can get to you.
Yeah, you can. So on Instagram, we're on it now. You can follow me at _ Jay Acosta, JAYACOSTA. My website is www.jason-acosta.com. Everything is on there pretty much about me. The articles I write, my story, just some of the work that I do. So if anybody ever wants to connect, just to tap in, feel free to. And then I have a creative brand called Live from the Bronx. You can check out some of our stuff there. We're doing some dope work in the community, collaborating with different brands and hosting different types of events. But that website is www.livefromthebronx.com. And then these guys know how to get to me. So for whatever reason you can't find me, reach out to BMEA.
Yeah. For sure. Well, Jason, man, we appreciate it, bro. And, we definitely going to talk more, man. I definitely going to be playing this back. And we're going to stuff on the YouTube page as well and on Facebook. So I appreciate you joining us, man.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me, man. It's always a pleasure to build with y'all.
Likewise, bro. Likewise.
All right.
Take it easy, man.
Yep.
All right. Peace.
All right, so Payne, you got the internet situation worked out. We got some good info from the good brother Jason. Got a lot of people tapping in. I want to shout out a few people. Yeah, we got a lot of people in here. My mom was even in here, so shout out to my mom. Shout out to Mario Masson. A lot of people who I just know through IG, but we appreciate you all supporting BMEA. If you are new to us, please hit the follow button because we do this bi-weekly. We hop on live with different educators doing things in the space to do what Jason just said, just sharing information, right? Sharing what's working in our spaces so you can maybe try it in yours. And we got some other things coming up. I see Sterling said Mike always has this problem, even on FaceTime. Oh, okay. Yeah, he needed to upgrade that iPad. Maybe he got an Android there. I don't know what he has, man.
Don't be like that. Come on, man. Shout out Moses, too. I see you in there, man. A lot of brothers from the appreciate y'all joining us, man. I'll have it straight the next time. Don't worry. Got to upgrade my 5G.
All right, cool. So Mike, what we have coming up next, man? Give us the reminders before we get out of here.
For sure. I mean, next week we coming back with the podcast on the 17th, man. We're going to talk about, finding your passion in schools and how can schools do a better job of building the strengths of students. So it's gonna be a dope conversation, and I'm excited for it. You know what I mean? If you guys, what I was gonna say, mentoring program's doing well. You know, check us out on our website, see all the work that we're doing. Follow us, obviously, if you haven't already on IG at Black Male Educators Alliance, and you know that's it.
Yeah. And also, before we get out of here, just a couple of events we have going on. Actually, tomorrow, Dr. Lewis is going to be presenting at Georgetown University. If you happen to be in the DMV area, you can still register, I believe, to see that in person, or you can register to see it online. Either way, check out our website, blackmaleeducatorsalliance.org/links. It has pretty much all of the most recent and new events coming up. Shout out to everyone who registered for the Black Panther 2 private screen that's taking place a week from today. That's it was like 150 seats going in like less than 24 hours. So that's gonna be a beautiful thing. A bunch of educators from the area. We have the grant recipients. We got a lot going on. We got positions up. So, we got a lot going on. It's exciting times, doing the great work. Appreciate you, Randolph, for checking in as well. And yeah, man. Anything else, Mike, before we say goodbye to the people?
No, sir. Shout out to those people who did win the Anton Horton Wellness Award. I'm glad you mentioned that. Shout out to them. And no, I think that's it. We got Giving Tuesday coming up in a few weeks. So excited about that too. So people just stay tuned.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, everybody. It's Chris and Mike for Black Male Educators Alliance, Lifting Our Voice podcast, the live IG edition. We'll see you in a week on the regular programming. Take care, and we'll see you soon.